Hi, this is Fred Schultz. I'm running for president. I haven't spoken to you in a few days. I'm very angry, and as I'm sure all of you are, and feeling scared for myself and all Americans, but especially those of Hispanic descent and Jews. Attacks, hate crimes are way up in the last few years against all people, up to over 7,000 the FBI reported last year. But especially against Jews and Hispanics, Mexicans. This last major shooting in El Paso, where 22 people were killed and 26 were injured, and then, of course, the Tree of Life shooting, which is the largest attack on American Jews ever. 11 killed there. And, of course, gun murders in the U.S. are just soaring in general. I mean, we have 50 people a day being shot on our streets, mostly due to our drug prohibition laws. Obviously, we have some mass shootings. It's a tiny percentage of the killings in our country, but still, we can stop them. We can stop most of these just by banning assault weapons, because that's obviously the weapon of choice. I mean, in Dayton, where 20 people were killed, I believe. I have to check the number. It's and 20, I think it's around 20. It was around 20 killed. It was less than that. It was 11 killed in 32 seconds. 11 killed, I think, in 32 seconds. And 20 something maimed for life. I mean, this is a nightmare. And there's one reason and one reason alone. And don't kid yourself. This is Trump. If you are a Jew and you donated money to this Nazi Trump, you are partially responsible for the murder of many Jews and many Mexicans. And you are responsible for this surge in hate crimes across the country, up to over 7,000 last year, according to the FBI. The number of attacks against Jews in 2016 versus the year before was up 57%. Or maybe it's 2017 versus 16. I have to check. It was up 57%, according to the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League. So ADL compiles these records. The FBI compiles these records. The Southern Poverty Law Center compiles these records. They all confirm that hate crimes against Jews are going through the roof, and hate crimes in general are going through the roof. And obviously hate crimes against Mexicans are going through the roof, and Hispanics in general, like that idiot, evil Nazi in El Paso said that he went there to kill Mexicans and Hispanics purposely because he figured he would find some Hispanics there. I mean, this is a Latinos, Latinx, whatever words you use, you understand. These are sick people who are being set off by the sickest of all. Trump said he wants to ban crazy people from having weapons. Oh, well, that means taking him out of office. Because he's the craziest person in the world. He's the biggest Nazi of them all. And he has the biggest weapons in the world at his disposal. And we all know that. Now, I have been fighting since the day before he was sworn in. I filed a lawsuit to try to block him from being sworn in because he was not elected. He is not legally the president. This piece of shit Nazi is not legally the president, not morally the president. He lost by 3 million votes. As President Carter said, he's not legitimately the president. He didn't say that because he lost by 3 million votes. He said that because the Russians helped so much, and there's so much proof of that. Obviously. And according to Mueller's report, the Russians didn't just help him, through disseminating emails they had hacked. They hacked into every voting machine in this country, and it's possible they switched the actual results of the election, for all we know. It's actually likely. That's what President Carter was saying, that he did not legitimately win. That he, in other words, even lost the electoral college votes if our votes had been properly counted. Now, my lawsuit says, and it's it's correct. I'm filing it with the Supreme Court for certain the next few days. However, the chance of being, the case being taken up is under 1%. The chance of winning, I think, is high if they want to save their lives, our lives. You see, the thing is, everybody thinks of this in terms of, oh, we have to win this election in a year and a half. 2020, we better win at the end of 2020. I had a nightmare about 2 years ago, and I occasionally have these prescient nightmares. I can tell when they're prescient. This does not mean they will happen. It does mean that we can prevent them from happening, but it means we must stop them from happening. And my nightmare showed Trump. Actually, it was Jared Kushner and Stephen Miller. Trump was probably in hiding, but they were presiding over mass murders of us. And you had to bow or be shot. The few survivors were taken prisoners. And I was one of those prisoners, and you had to bow or be shot. I think that I bowed. I can't remember. I woke up that second. Just to not be shot. These people are sick. You think that he, first of all, I'll never call him the president. And if I win this election, I will, take every measure to reverse everything he's done since he's been in office. Starting with removing the judges he appointed because impeaching them. Through impeachment is probably the best way, because every one of them violated their oath to uphold the Constitution by accepting their oath to be a judge appointed by him. Because he violated his oath to obey the Constitution when he accepted Roberts swearing him in, who also violated his oath of being a lawyer and a judge by swearing him in. Why? Because Trump is not a legitimate president. Why? Because he lost by 3 million votes. You say, oh, but the Electoral College says that he is the president, so he is the president. No. Also, by the way, Joe Biden played a role in upholding this when it was his job to, quote, certify the Electoral College vote. He did so. There was a protester there screaming. If you see Michael Moore's movie Fahrenheit 11/9, there was a protester there screaming, one person, one vote. Biden banged the gavel and had him arrested. I mean, I'm not making this up. Kamala Harris, she played a role in allowing Trump to be sworn in. I tried for months to get her, and she was my attorney general, because I live in California right now, and I tried for months to get her and every other state attorney general to sue on the behalf of their citizens, because everybody in every state, every citizen of every state got a tiny percentage of the vote of people in Wyoming. Not to mention, people in California got 29% of those in Wyoming. People who voted for Hillary Clinton got 66% on average of the vote of those who voted for Trump. Or another way to look at it is those who voted for Trump got 1.5 times the vote of those who voted for Hillary. This is a crime. And we have constitutional rights to an equal vote. The 12th Amendment passed after the Civil War. The 13th Amendment, freeing the slaves, but the 12th Amendment passed after the Civil War. We have the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act. We have the ICCPR, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. We have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, all promising us an equal vote. Now, these civil rights cases in the 1960s all interpreted the U.S. Constitution, the 14th Amendment, as applied to the federal government through the Fifth Amendment, as nullifying, overturning the 12th Amendment. Those cases, all those civil rights cases, said we have human and constitutional rights to an equal vote. There's no two ways around that. So my case says that the 14th Amendment overturns the 12th Amendment. First of all, the 14th Amendment, the 12th Amendment was passed 100 years earlier than the 14th Amendment, but also, if you have part of the Constitution that says that you don't have a right to an equal vote, and then 100 years later you have something passed that says you are entitled to an equal vote, and then 100 years later shouldn't have taken 100 years, but you have civil rights cases guaranteeing a right to an equal vote. Not to mention, as I said, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights after World War II, the ICCPR, which George H.W. Bush signed in '92. The Senate passed unanimously. I mean, this was guaranteeing us an equal vote, universal and equal suffrage. This was signed as a treaty, and treaty is law that our government has to uphold. Yes, they signed a covenant to it saying that all of this has to be, none of this is active until the Senate passes ratifying language. But that many times it's been determined in international law that you can't pass a amendment nullifying the whole everything else you've written, or that amendment that you pass nullifying it is itself null and void. So that's how I look at that stupid little amendment. You can't say you're going to uphold our human rights and say, oh, only if we put this into law. That's not how it works. But even if you do think that's how it works, all of those civil rights cases from the 60s are quite clear. We have, constitutional right to an equal vote. My point is, he is not the president. He was illegally sworn in. Illegally. Therefore, I will, have him impeach him and all. Well, he's going to jail for his crimes against humanity, but and everybody else who contributed to his crimes against humanity, of course. But we're going to remove those from power who he appointed, everyone, because anybody he appointed to any position, including judges, including these two Supreme Court judges, Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, they are not legally judges. Not only they're not morally judges, they're not legally judges. I mean, they're trying to turn our country into a dictatorship. They're trying to ban all immigrants who aren't rich or who don't have jobs right now. Well, my great-grandmother, great-grandma Helen, came over in 1906. She was 8 years old. And first of all, she was ripped from her family's arms for a year. She was forced to go to Canada and work as a maid at the age of 8 because she got pink eye on the boat over. They made her leave her family for a year and be a maid for some mean Canadian family, she told me. Although, obviously, it was better for her to go to Canada and work for a year than to be sent back to Europe, where she would have been killed, probably. But they were running, she and her family were refugees. They were running for their lives, and they ripped her from her family's arms for a year to be a maid in Canada. I mean, and she was always very furious about that, and I don't blame her. And I'm furious about what they're doing right now. There's many children, I believe it's over 10, who have died in U.S. custody now. Many more adults, I think 20, 30 more adults have already died in custody. I mean, this is sick. These people are refugees of murders going on south of our border, and the main cause of these murders is the USA drug prohibition laws. And I am the only candidate who's been fighting against these drug prohibition laws my whole life. At least, since I was a senior in high school, I figured out what was going on, and I figured out, I won't discuss how, that smoking weed was much less intoxicating than drinking alcohol. Yet one was illegal and one wasn't. And then it was obvious to me that we had a war going on our streets, because you read about it in the papers every day, and it was obvious that the main cause of this fighting was the drugs being illegal. I mean, we had tens of thousands, I think it's 30,000 murders on our streets in this last year, and 30,000 fentanyl overdoses. You know how many cocaine overdoses we had last year? 7,500. You know how many the year before? 5,500. The jump was because people are starting to cut cocaine with fentanyl. Now, the only way to stop all these accidental overdoses is you legalize everything. Then people can get safe stuff in stores. Anybody. That's how we should do it. And therefore, you won't have the crime. I mean, we have to worry about these murders, but you get my point. You have tens of thousands of murders on the streets and tens of thousands of people dying of accidental overdoses. And the actual people dying from overdoses of these drugs, of the actual drugs they're trying to ban, is very small. Not to mention, I should mention, the number of drugs that they interdict is under 1%. We don't know how much under 1%. It could be 1/10 of 1%. It probably is, but it's far under 1%. I mean, whenever they arrest a major drug dealer or bust a major drug ring in some city, you don't see the price of drugs fall. Why? Because they're not making a dent. So, it's human nature to want to get intoxicated sometimes, whether it's through exercise or sugar, which is the most addictive and deadly drug in the world, or other intoxicants, alcohol, opium, coca, ayahuasca. I mean, these have been the main intoxicants in different regions of the world throughout history, and America only legalized the one that was common in Europe. I mean, that's ethnocentrism. Or people would say racism. It's not. Although I don't believe in the concept of race, I get what you're saying. It's that's ethnocentrism. That's racism to make one culture's drug of choice legal and all the others illegal. And then arrest those people and then enslave them. I mean, the USA right now has 2.4 million people in jail. We make 15 million arrests approximately a year. The vast majority of those are for victimless crimes. I mean, mostly drug use, but also or possession or sales. Although sales is just 10-15% of those arrests. But also you have sex work, you have gambling. I mean, you even have drinking and driving where the vast majority were not a risk to anyone. I mean, sure, a certain percentage are, but and if you're posing an extreme risk to people, I do think that should be, say you're driving down a street swerving. I mean, yeah, you should be arrested, but I don't think you should face major jail time for that. You should be arrested. You should face probably a few weeks in jail and probably not drive for a year. But there's a much better way to address all this, which I address in my platform, which is simply installing breathalyzers in every car. I mean, of course, we have all these people doing all these prescription drugs, many legally, many because they have diseases they need to treat. But that doesn't mean we need to allow them to drive. We have Uber now, or Lyft, or a friend can drive you somewhere. But we even should have, if you're, we can have free government services to help people, who are on medication legally to get rides places. But yeah, I mean, now they've finally even started in I think it was Scandinavia, they developed breathalyzers that can test for other drugs. Those, that was only a few years ago, so they might be extraordinarily expensive now. But hey, even if they're $1,000 a pop, I mean, a life is worth that. Not just one life. I mean, one person could kill a few people. Anyway, my point is, the vast majority of our arrests are for victimless crimes. Of course, then you also have crimes with victims. But the USA does punish people, for multiples the amount of time that other countries do. I mean, as you've probably heard the statistics, we have 4 or 5% of the world's population and 25% of the world's prisoners. And they are all slaves. I mean, they are all tortured through the very act of being prisoners. They are all enslaved because they must work. So that's the definition of slavery. And they get paid either 0 or 5, 10, 15 cents an hour. And then the state bills them out at $10, $20, $30 an hour. I'm not making this up. I mean, this is sickness. This is torture for state profit, or for state breaking even. This is sick. Now, all these other candidates support these drug prohibition laws. They do not believe we have the right to do to our bodies as we wish. I'm the only candidate who does. And yes, it's good public policy, as I've explained. It'll stop most of the murder. Will stop most of the murders on the streets. Will stop most of the accidental overdoses. Probably overall about 100 deaths a day will prevent. And of course, assault weapons ban and extreme background checks, and we can prevent most of the other murders. Now, as far as Trump's suggestion that we can somehow figure out who's predisposed to violence, number one, it's normally, not possible. Now, if you have someone who's obviously a danger to himself or others, has been convicted of some kind of crime. I mean, people say domestic violence, but it's not, if somebody has slapped a spouse, I don't think that necessarily means in a fit of rage, which, should be punished. I don't think that means that they should necessarily have a gun taken away. Not forever. No, I don't think, it should depend on the crime. Now, if somebody punches a spouse, if somebody beats a spouse, I mean, yeah, but, a slap, which I am against, very against, and should, be a crime, is a crime, and should be a crime. But anyway, my point is, Trump then, a day after saying, first of all, as I said, if we're going to be banning people from having weapons, that means we have to remove Trump from office. And you don't let somebody with weapons stay in office another second. And what about Pence? You're saying, oh, well, first of all, he is controlled by the Koch brothers. But that's not the issue. Trump didn't win. So the point is, we can remove him for not winning and therefore have a democracy forever if we just remove him for not winning, but with the real reason being that we know that he's going to kill us all if we don't do so immediately. Now then also, if I do win, I will declare, I'll not only do my best to remove anybody he's appointed from office, either through impeachment or just any other way. I mean, but legally and peacefully. But we also, I will declare America a democracy day one. We are not a democracy right now, and I hate hearing people call America a democracy when, when I voted for Hillary Clinton, my vote counted 2/3 of those who voted for Trump. And obviously there was a racial disparity of those who voted for Trump. So obviously our whole system is ethnically and gender biased too, because this is a ethnic and gender bias in our, I don't like the word racist because I don't believe in the concept of race, but yes, racist if you like that word. And by the way, I don't call people white nationalists or white supremacists, because I don't believe that there's such a thing as white and black and brown. We are each of a certain ethnicity, and each of us has a different skin color. By the way, this is reddish pink. This is white, because I'm part albino. There's a difference. There's a difference. But anyway, no. Let's call a Nazi a Nazi. Trump's a Nazi. He's a Nazi. He hates anybody who isn't of, like, what he would consider Northern European descent. That's how he works. Now you can say, oh, well, he has Italians working for him. He has Jews working for him. Look, the last ad, he's willing to do, anybody who agrees with him on banning anybody but white nationalists and, Muslims. I mean, he's obviously anti-Muslim. They agree with. But, hate crimes in our country are up the last few years dramatically, including murders. And obviously we have the murders in New Zealand, the Christchurch murders there against Muslims. We have attacks against Muslims soaring. We have murders against Jews going through the roof. And yeah, this is the fault of this Nazi. And of course he's willing to get the help from any Jew who will help him or donate to him. And of course he wants the cover of saying, oh, well, Netanyahu loves me. So look, he is not good for the Jews. He is not good for Israel at all. I don't want to hear any. No, if you believe that Israel should continue on their current path, that this is a current path towards destruction, because then you're looking at a country with, banning half of their population from voting because they're not Jewish. You can't have a country like that. I mean, if you incorporate the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, well, the Gaza Strip they gave away, but they're still blockading them. They gave back to those who have it. But the West Bank, look, I mean, obviously they were not, that was not part of Israel when Israel was founded, but they were, about to be attacked They did prevent an attack, and they conquered this land. Now, do I think that means they should be allowed to keep all of it? No. But I think they should be able to keep, half of it, say split it half and half, because there's already a huge amount of Jews there, and just split it half and half. And not the pepperoni pizza looking map that they did under Clinton. By the way, Clinton supported this war on drugs. He was a big drug warrior. They're like, well, violence was going up. Yeah, because of drug prohibition. Drug prohibition makes violence go up. Just like when we outlawed alcohol, murders went doubled, and when they made alcohol legal again, murders fell back to where they had been. I mean, this is when you make something illegal, then you increase the value of it. When you increase the value of it, and you have bleak job opportunities, then you have crime, massive crime. You have stealing, and you have gangs, selling and cutting stuff with illegal things that you don't like, fentanyl, or dangerous other drugs because they're cheaper. I mean, this is horrible. The only way around this is to legalize everything, and if that doesn't work, and it might not, we should probably just give away some free drugs, have an allotment that everybody could have per year. Free versus any amount of profit, and people will go for free. Most people would go for free. And this is about trying to stop overdoses and stop the murders on our streets. And these aren't just, drug dealers getting shot. There's innocent children being shot by stray bullets. I mean, yes, it's true. Some of this, that's not the only cause of murders here or south of our border, where there's been about 100,000 people killed per year in the last several decades. About 2 million since the year 2000, I believe, is the number. This is just, we have turned the region south of our border into a killing field, which is, mass murder, mass torture, mass rape, and mass poverty. Now, if we had instead legalized all drugs in our country, encouraged all other countries to legalize their drugs, and done economic development there and here, then we would have had a different story. And that's what I intend to do, is legalize all drugs here. Day one, by the way, I believe that the Constitution says we have a right to do to our own bodies as we wish. I mean, Thomas Jefferson himself said the legitimate powers of government extend to such acts as are injurious to others. Meaning, if you're not hurting somebody else, then the government doesn't have a right to try to attempt to regulate your behavior. So I'm the only candidate who will legalize, who will end all victimless crimes day one, who will legalize all drugs, including cannabis, day one, because I don't believe we have to wait for any local or federal legislature to agree, because they don't have a right to take away this right from us. Now, if some court, after removing all these judges we want to remove, if some court still does make us go through, does say, if the Supreme Court still says we have to pass legislation, then we'll go ahead and try to do that. But it's a silly, ridiculous thing. I intend to use my power as president, if you elect me, to just like Brown v. Board of Education, they sent in the federal troops to stop school desegregation. We'll have to send the troops from state to state to state to stop states from illegally enslaving people based on unconstitutional laws, or trying to arrest us for unconstitutional laws. I don't want any violence, but I just want them to stop arresting us and torturing us and enslaving us when we're innocent. And I'm the only one who will do that. Day one. Day one. All right. More soon. Love you all. Bye.